Welcome to Efiwe, excellence without stress. Hello guys, welcome to Efiwe, and in Efiwe we want you to have academic excellence without much stress, and that's what we are promising. So guys, we're going to be taking the first topic today in biology, the cell organization of life. So what this simply means is that life is organized starting from the cell upward, because cell, as we all know, is the basic unit of life. So from the cell, life is organized in more complex and in more multicellular fashion. My name is Dr. Mokunle, as I said, and I'm going to be taking you through all of the biology. I hope you are going to have a very nice one, and welcome. So yeah, this picture just shows us living and non-living things. So what is the major difference between living and non-living things? You can see the different examples of living things, like the tiger, the tree, the spider, the mushrooms. You know, the plants and the animals basically are the living things. And the non-living things here, you can see, you know, everything that we see around us that is non-living. And we know the difference. You know, you might not know, but one of the major difference between living and non-living things is that living things have cells. And cells are those basic units that can carry out the functions of life. Non-living things, they don't have any cell, and so they are not living. But living things, plants, animals, they have cells in them. And so this is an interesting picture that just shows us the difference between living and non-living things, right? So what are the characteristics of living things or living organisms, right? I know we all know this, Mr. Ninja D, and you know, they have even added two more, which I'm going to also discuss. But basically, as we said, the difference between living and non-living things is the presence of a cell, and this cell can then carry out all the characteristics or functions of living organisms. And these are some of them that have been listed here. Of course, you might be surprised that, you know, Mr. Ninja is movement, respiration, nutrition, irritability, growth, excretion, reproduction, and then death. All this homeostasis, metabolism, regulation, there are some new additions, but they are not that important, you know, because homeostasis just means being able to regulate your internal environment, which all cells do. And so it's the same thing as regulation. Number 1 is the same thing as regulation, number 8. And number 10 is metabolism. It's just the processes that happen within a cell. If you are living, you have to, you know, have processes going on. So this is just a pictorial example of what cells do, but let's go into it more appropriately. So yeah, we know the major things. Number 1 is movement. We are using Mr. Ninja card, right? So in the CAD, the last 3 letters, we have added competition, adaptation, and death. It's no longer Mr. Ninja D. Learn Mr. Ninja card. The card is CAD. So the first thing is movement. A living organism is able to move its whole body or part of the body. And we know this because we can move, and other animals around us can move. And even if plants can't move their whole body, they can actually move some part of their bodies, you know, in response to external stimuli. And so for animals, it is called locomotion, because we can move our entire body from one place to another. Why plants just move only parts of their bodies in response to external stimuli. Like, let's say, for example, if a plant is going one way and then you block that place, you block that entrance, it's going to look for another way to grow, like grow its leaf and grow its stem. So that's movement in some sense. So that's M. Okay, we are doing Mr. Ninja card, right? The next thing is respiration, guys. So respiration, as we all know, is you know, basically taking in oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide, you know. So all living organisms respires, and if we think about it in the cellular level, like on the cell, from the cell, we'll know that respiration is basically releasing energy from breaking down food. So we as animals now, the reason why we're taking oxygen is because that oxygen is needed in our cells. You know, we are made up of many cells, like for example, in different parts of our body, like our eyes have cells, our blood has cells, our bones have cells. So the oxygen is taken in through the nose, it goes into the lungs, it diffuses from the lungs into the blood. So the blood carries it into all the cells. The cells then extract this oxygen from the blood and then use it to break down food substances that we have eaten, so that it can release what? Energy. Energy is the key. So the cell has enough energy to do whatever it wants to do. So respiration is another characteristic of living organisms, and there are 2 types: aerobic, the one I've described, which uses oxygen, and anaerobic respiration, in which the organism doesn't use oxygen but tries to break down food. We are going to be talking about all these things much more later on in the course, in the Efiwe JAMB biology. So stay by. The next thing we're discussing is nutrition. All living organisms need food to survive, need food to stay alive, because you need, as we mentioned in the last part, you need food so that you can get energy from it. So just like you need to respire, you need respiration to break down the food. You also need the food, to provide energy for you. So there are two types of nutrition. The one that we know, the plants plants make their own food, and it is called autotrophic or holophytic nutrition. Please note that. You see that it's bold. Autotrophic or holophytic nutrition. And animals cannot make their food, but they depend on plant for food, and that's called heterotrophic or holozoic nutrition. Okay, so plants make their food through the process called photosynthesis. Great. So we have done Mr. Niger. We have done movement, respiration, nutrition. The next thing is the I. The I stands for irritability or sensitivity. So what this basically means is that when you are pinched, let's say for example, I put a needle into you, you're going to that's irritability. That's you being sensitive. Okay, so all living organisms are sensitive. They're able to detect and respond to changes in their environment using their sense organs, for example. And this is important because if you're not sensitive, then you would easily just die because you will not know when danger is around you. So all the sense organs we have, like we as humans, we have 5 sense organs. They are meant to keep us alive. So irritability or sensitivity is one important characteristics of living organism. The next one we are looking at is growth. G, right? All living organisms grow and they increase in size, which is also accompanied by development. So you don't just stay the same. You grow because your cells taking food, they process it, release energy, they do activities, and they also grow in size and add nutrients to them. The next thing is the E, which is excretion. Excretion just simply refers to the production of unwanted or toxic substances and it being taken out of the body of the living organism. So because of the metabolic processes, and by metabolic I mean just the processes that happen in the cell, like breaking down things and building things, most times they are unwanted materials or what we call waste that the cells generate, and this waste, if it accumulates in the cell, is going to destroy the cell and kill the cell. So this waste has to be taken out, and that's the process of excretion. Sometimes people mistake excretion with defecation. Defecation is the passage of feces from the GI tract. GI means gastrointestinal tract, that is the stomach and the intestines. When they digest food, they pass out feces. But excretion talks more about the cell, right? The cell excretes majorly water and carbon dioxide that can be injurious or can be harmful from the cell. So take note of that. When they talk about excretion, don't think about defecation. Excretion is just removal of the toxic substances from the cell and from the body. All right, R is the next one. R stands for reproduction. So all living organisms must reproduce. That is, they can produce living organisms like themselves, so that when they eventually die, which we will talk about. D is death, which is one of the characteristics of living organisms. Their offspring can continue living. So there are 2 types, sexual and asexual. In sexual, you need 2, a male and a female usually, and then in asexual, one living organism can actually maybe divide or have another organism come out of it. So guys, we have done movement, respiration, nutrition, irritability, growth, excretion, reproduction. So it remains what? 3. CAD that I discussed. Good. So what are the other characteristics? Competition, adaptation, and definite lifespan or death. So competition just means, from the word competition, it means to compete. So living organisms compete for everything. For water, for food, for space, for mates, like even animals you can see, they compete to, get another female to have sexual intercourse with, or so living organisms just compete generally for everything, whether it's a plant or an animal. But imagine if I drop a pen here now on this table that I'm using, it's not going to compete for anything. It's going to stay there. If I carry it away and trade it in another place, it's going to stay there. But living organisms compete for space, for everything. Next thing is adaptation. Living organisms also adapt to the environment they have been put in. And so this is important because you need to adapt to survive. If, for example, now I take one of you away from where there's enough water and take you to a desert, what will you start to do? You start to conserve water. You start to adapt. Like, hey, a desert means where there's not a lot of water. It's dry land, very dry. if you have some water, you not just waste it or pour it away like you do now that you have access to water. You want to conserve it. So adaptation just means living organisms, they sense what's happening and they can adapt to it. And the last thing in the characteristics is definite lifespan or death. Say all living organisms eventually will die, and they have a defined lifespan that they will live for. Guys, that's Mr. Niger card. Amazing. So let's talk about the cell, because we said, if you can remember the first picture I gave, I said the major difference between living and non-living organism is the fact that living organisms have cells. And so what's cell? Cell is the simplest bit of living matter that can exist independently. That means is the simplest, the smallest, the most basic, that can exist and still be a living unit. And so we have already mentioned there are unicellular organisms and they are multicellular. Unicellular means one cell, right? Like amoeba, like paramecium, like euglena, they're just one cell. And they're also multicellular organisms like we humans, like birds, like plants that have many cells. So we have said the basic characteristics, the Mr. Niger card, and we have said that also that these cells can perform the functions of life, which we have mentioned, like movement, respiration, excretion, and all that. So what are we going to define a cell as? A cell is the structural and functional unit of life. What this means is that it is structure means, the structure, that's what structural means, and function means it's able to carry out everything it needs to survive or to stay alive. So the cell is the structural, it has all the structures needed for life, and the functional, it can carry out all the function needed for life, unit of life. So it is the basic unit of life. It is the simplest bit of living matter that can exist independently, So guys, that's definition of cell. So let's go to cell components and their function. So what are some of the cell components? I'm sure we have studied this before, but we are going to be studying it again, guys. So the first thing we are mentioning is the cell wall. Cell wall is present in plants, okay, and that's what makes it you can see plants the way they are very rigid. Well, some of them are very strong, but cell wall is composed only in plant cells. Please note that. And it's usually called a cellulose cell wall. It surrounds the plasma membrane. So all cells, guys, listen to this. This is very important. All cells have plasma membrane or cell membrane, right? Both animals and plants. But in addition to that, plant cells have cell wall, and it is tough, rigid, but allows things to freely pass, unlike the plasma membrane or the cell membrane. So this cell membrane and plasma membrane, they mean the same thing. Every cell has it, but the plant cell now has a cell wall that is tough and rigid, that just gives it strength, but it's freely permeable. Unlike the cell membrane or the plasma membrane, this one is not freely permeable. It allows things only selectively. It allows some things in and some things out. The important thing to note here is that cell wall is for mechanical support so that the plant can stand, and protection to the cell. That's what it is for. But remember, cell wall is different from cell membrane or plasma membrane. All cells have cell membrane or plasma membrane, but only plant cells have cell wall. After the cell has cell membrane, after the plant cell has cell membrane, it then has cell wall also covering. Great. Number 2 is protoplasm. So protoplasm just refers to everything in the cell, inside the cell, right? And this would include the nucleus and the cytoplasm. So the nucleus is let me quickly just show you guys exactly. Good. So let's use this. So this is the protoplasm. This is the nucleus. This structure here that is yellow, and then everything else is the cytoplasm. You can see there are different organelles that we are going to discuss that we're already discussing that are present in the cell. So everything is protoplasm. Protoplasm is nucleus plus cytoplasm. You can see this structure, this fluid white structure that is labeled cytoplasm is the cytoplasm, and it contains all the organelles, right? Great. So what then? Let's move on to number 3, the nucleus. So nucleus is, I've shown you in the earlier picture, it contains DNA in the eukaryotic cell. Eukaryotic just means there's a nucleus, right? And so it is responsible for all the things that have to do with DNA, genetics, hereditary, and even the productions of protein. So let's just note what the nucleus does. It contains DNA and chromosome. The DNA is in the chromosome, and all these things are involved in the production of protein. They are involved also in cell division or in reproduction. as the case may be. So guys, note the nucleus, very important structure. It is like the brain of the cell. Okay, so it's the one that directs the cell and controls the cell on what to do, whether to divide, whether to make the next step, what kind of proteins to make, and all that. So nucleus, very important cell component. Please guys, don't ever forget nucleus. Nucleus is the big boy in the cell. So I've talked about cytoplasm, right? Is fluid, is the, it contains all the other organelles in the cell, and it is bounded by the plasma membrane or the cell membrane. Great. Number 5 is the mitochondria. Okay, so this is where cellular respiration take place. As you know, this is where energy is gotten. So the energy producing reaction takes place in the mitochondria. Please let us know that. When you hear mitochondria, just think of powerhouse, like NEPA, like PHCN. It is one producing all the energy, right? So great. Next thing is chloroplast. Chloroplast, just like cell wall, is only found in plants and plant-like organisms like protists, and it just contains the green pigment chlorophyll that allows it to it is the site of photosynthesis, right guys? Photosynthesis means using light directly, the sunlight, to produce food. So the pigment that is green, that gives the green color to plants, is called chlorophyll, and it is contained in chloroplast in only plant cells. Good. Next thing we're talking about is ribosomes. So ribosomes are just small rounded bodies. Some are found free in the cytoplasm, while some are also attached to the endoplasmic reticulum. So what are they used for? They are the site for protein synthesis. So the cell needs to synthesize, or synthesize just means to make protein, and so the cell needs to make protein for its survival, to repair itself, and all that. And so these ribosomes, they are attached to this endoplasmic reticulum, and they are the ones that make the protein. So we call them protein synthesis ribosomes. Good. So number 8. So Golgi apparatus, we all know these structures, they are large. Let me show us. Great. Where's the Golgi? You see, Golgi apparatus, they're just a lineup of membrane and sac. What they do majorly is what we call packaging and exporting. So they just package things together. This is it here also, Golgi apparatus. You can see there's Golgi vesicles. So they are, after they package the exports, they allow the things to move away in vesicles. So that's majorly, this is a stack of membrane lined sacs, and they carry export materials like enzymes and hormones. So majorly what they do is to pack and export. They package and they export materials. Let's move to number 9, lysosomes. These are also, when you think of lysosome, just think of enzymes. They contain digestive enzymes that break down structures and substances. So let's say, for example, an organelle is worn out, the lysosome will come, push its substances, all those digestive enzymes that it has in it, to dissolve that thing in the compartment and break it down. So like break this down to normal. You can think of it like like digestive enzymes. When you hear lysosomes, just remember digestive enzymes that breaks down structures and substances. Great, amazing. Let's move to central. So central are like two rod-like centrols are found only in animal cells. During this discussion we talked about cell wall and chloroplast being found only in plant cell. Now this is something that is found only in animal cell, centrols. And what are they concerned about? They're concerned with cell division. I'm trying to see if there's centrols here. Good. So something like this, you see this centrosome and centrols, when it's time for the cell to divide, they're activated. They are two rod-like substances. So please note. Let's move to number 11, guys. Number 11 is vacuole. So in plants, a large central vacuole is usually found in a mature cell and usually contains cell sap. Cell sap is like a thick, I don't know if you know it, guys. When you break like a stem or a plant on your way, you see this whitish substance that comes out like something. That's like how cell sap is too, guys. So it's usually found there, and it is found major in plant cell. It has a central vacuole that is large. But in animal cells, guys, listen properly. In animal cells, there are small vacuoles, but they are multiple. Okay, so that's the difference between plant vacuole and animal vacuole. So in plants is one and it's central. In animal, it is many and it's smaller. Guys, I think this is the last one we're doing. Number 12, endoplasmic reticulum, also called ER, endoplasmic reticulum. So what do they do? Majorly, there are two types, the rough and the smooth. We mentioned earlier that the ribosomes, let me go back there, number 7. The ribosomes some are found free and some are attached to the endoplasmic reticulum. So the endoplasmic reticulum, the ones that have ribosomes, are important for making protein too. So when you think about So they are called the rough one. What makes it rough is that when you look at it from the microscope, you see ribosomes attached, like dots. So that's why they call it the rough endoplasmic reticulum, guys. So it's also important in protein synthesis as it joins work with ribosomes to make protein for the cells. So I think we have discussed this picture well. As you can see, the major difference: plant cell has cell wall. Apart from the cell membrane, see, animal has cell membrane, plant cell has cell membrane, but plant cell in addition has cell wall. Plant cell has chloroplast. You can see where my cursor is. Chloroplast. Amazing. What else did we talk about? Animal cells have centrioles, right? And food vacuole, you can see. This is one food vacuole for the animal. And it has, usually it would have more, like 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. But plants, you can see one central one that is large, that contains cell sap, right? You can see all the other things we have discussed: lysosome, endoplasmic reticulum. So we talked about smooth and the rough. The smooth one is majorly important in detoxification, for those of you that are interested in that. Detoxification and breaking down just detoxifying substances that might be harmful to the body. But the rough endoplasmic reticulum that has ribosomes is important in protein synthesis for the cell. And when we mean protein synthesis, we mean the cell tries to make protein for everything. It could be hormones, it could be enzyme, it could be to grow, it could be to divide. So protein synthesis is important in the cell. Guys, I love this absolutely. The Venn diagram of animal and plant cells showing what is contained only in the animal cell, what is contained only in the plant cell, and what they both have in common. So let's start with what they both have in common: nucleus, mitochondria, cell membrane, cytoplasm, Golgi apparatus, endoplasmic reticulum, and ribosomes. Great. Animal cell, no cell wall, right? No chloroplast. Have many small vacuoles. We mentioned nucleus is present at the center of the cell. Contains lysosomes, contains centrioles near the nucleus. Is irregular in shape. So please note this difference. Animal cell, we have mentioned some of them, but just to put in more light, animal cells are irregular. Plant cells, you can see it has definite shape. This one contains centrioles. Plant cells don't have centrioles, right? Animal cell has lysosomes, the digestive enzymes. Plant cells do also have that. Okay, guys. Nucleus is present at the center in animal cell. Nucleus here is pushed to one side of the wall. I think it's because of this large what's it called, central vacuole. It pushes the nucleus to one side, but for the animal cell it looks like it's more central. Okay, so of course the plant cell, we have mentioned some of them: cell wall, chloroplast. It has a large central vacuole, it has a definite shape, and nucleus is pushed to one side of the wall. Why the animal cell? All these things, and it's also irregular in shape. It can form any shape. All right, this is amazing. Let's go to the last thing we're discussing. At the beginning of the class, we're talking about organization of life and the basic units starting from the cell. So that we have discussed all about the cell, let's now talk about how is life then organized. So the first level, guys, we're going to be discussing majorly 4 levels, right? So the first level is cell. Actually, we're going to be discussing 5 levels, right? The first level is the cell. So we have defined what a cell is. It's the basic functional and structural unit of life. It can be unicellular organisms like amoeba, right? Or paramecium or glenna. All these organisms just have only one cell, yet they are alive and they can do everything that everybody that is alive can do. Great. Or it can be multicellular organisms like us humans or other plants. Great. So cell can be contained in unicellular or multicellular organisms, but cell is the basic functional and structural unit of life. So when you think about life is organized starting from the cell, number 1. See what I said here. Examples of cells in plants will include the phloem cells and the xylem vessels. I want you to find out what these guys do. Phloem cells and xylem vessels. But we're going to be talking about it at one point when we talk about transport systems in plant and animals. But there are cells in plants. See, examples of cells in animals. Red blood cell. What do red blood cells do? Guys, red blood cells are found in the blood. And what do? They transport oxygen from, when I said earlier that oxygen diffuses from the lungs into the blood. It's these guys, right? Red blood cells. They are the ones that make the blood red. They are the ones that carry the oxygen. So the oxygen binds to them and it is carried. So there are cells in the blood, right? Red blood cells are in the blood. Other kind of cells in the blood includes white blood cells, platelets, and so on. Another example of cell is sperm cell and egg cell that is used in reproduction in animals. Amazing. So that's the first level of life, the cell level. The other level, which is building on top of that, the second level, is the tissue level. So what I want to say about the tissue level, so tissue is just a collection of cells. So you can see as we go up, cells are coming together to make the other level. So level 1 is cell level. Level 2 is the tissue level, which is collection of cells that are similar in structure and perform similar function. So they come together. Like, let's say normally amoeba is just one cell, but usually in tissue level, multiple cells will come together and do the same thing. So example of animal that exists at tissue level, guys, is Hydra. Never forget that. If you see it in the option, tissue level organism, Hydra, go for Hydra straight. So example of tissue would include things like muscle. Our muscle contains different kind of cells that work together for us to be able to move our hands, like I'm moving like I'm moving mine now. Another thing is the blood. Blood is also called liquid tissue in animals, and because it contains many different kinds of cells, like the red blood cells, the white blood cell that I've mentioned. So liquid tissue in animals, blood, guys. Examples of tissues in plants include the mesophyll layer in leaves and the xylem tissue. So guys, always listen to that. That's the tissue level thing. The next level is the organ level, and the organ is collection of different tissue that perform different functions. So in the tissue level, we've said different collection of cells that perform similar functions. In the organ level, which is the third level, there are tissues that come together and perform similar function. So what are examples of organ? We have the heart. Heart only performs only one function, right, in the body, which is to pump blood around the body. That is organ level. Heart is an organ because there's many tissues coming together to do that. Other perform multiple function, like the kidney. Kidney performs, excretive function. It also produces some hormones that we are going to learn later on. The liver, detoxifies the body, and it produces other things that we're also going to talk about. And this is a mistake. Heart, we said, performs just majorly one function, but the heart also can perform multiple function, guys. In case you don't know, the heart produces one hormone called atrial natriuretic peptide, but that's a big deal. Let's just know that in organ level is multiple tissues coming together to form organ. So an example of organ in plants would be onion bulb. Yeah, guys. So the fourth level is the system level. So in this system, it's just multiple organs coming together to form a system. So what are the examples? Digestive system, you have the stomach, organ, the intestine, organ, the liver, organ. Just multiple systems coming together, multiple organs coming together to form a system. Reproductive system, there are multiple organs here too. The prostate, the different organs that make like the ova or the egg, the uterus or the womb. There are different organs that come together to make sure that reproduction happens. Excretory system, circulatory system. We're all going to look at all these systems in the coming classes, guys. All right, the last level, which is the number 5 here, is the organism level. The organism level, guys. So in the organism level, you have multiple systems coming together to form an organism, and so it's kind of sweet and important to know that there are multiple, from the where we started from. Number 1 is cell. Number 2, multiple cells come together to form tissues. Number 3, multiple tissues come together to form organs. Number 4, multiple organs comes together to form system. And number 5, multiple systems come together to form the organism. So guys, thank you very, very much, guys. Thank you. Make sure you download the Efiwe app if you haven't. For more classes, take the tests that follows this lecture so that you can be getting ready for your exam, and make sure you accumulate points to yourself as their reward for everybody that accumulates points and get to be the best, as you see on the leaderboard. Remember, it's excellence without stress. Thank you. Take your test now. See you guys.